Hi and welcome to the Christian Gamer channel. I'm switching up the format again as I experiment with different ways of making these videos. I've included another Bible version, bringing the total to 3. I'm sticking with the good old faithful King James Version because the version is very popular and because it's in the public domain. I'm also using the New International Version because I believe it offers the best compromise between translating words and translating the ideas behind the words. Both of these are very popular versions. I'm now adding the English Standard Version because it has quite a rigorous translation. Not quite an interlinear translation, but it's about as strict as it's possible to get while still being readable. This is only an experiment though, so do let me know what you think in the comments. As always, I want to strongly urge you to leave feedback in the comments and preferably share some of your insights as well. I appreciate it can be scary leaving biblical insights for all the world to see, especially in this evil age of cancel culture, where simply trying to tell the truth risks persecution, or if not actual persecution, the fear of persecution down the road. But God did not give us a spirit of timidity, so let's not be afraid to share our insights. Now, in my first video, I gave a general overview of gaming from a Christian perspective and asked the question, is it okay for Christians to play games in general? To which the simple answer was yes, but, with a list of pitfalls to avoid. In this video I would like to explore the darker side of gaming in much more detail. So this video isn't aimed at Christians who are wondering if it's okay to play video games, but rather those who are already gamers and might be taking for granted things they perhaps shouldn't be. In this video, which is part 1 of the darker side of gaming, I would like to talk about time management. Video games in all their forms are designed to be engaging and entertaining. This means that without serious self-discipline, it's easy to get so sucked into the game that we can lose track of time. We can neglect important things in life such as sleep, self-care, work and interpersonal relationships, which can easily set us on a path of self-destruction. Now, I've got 2 methods for combating this problem. Firstly, I strive for a regular bedtime, and secondly, I try to get done with the real life things that I need to get done before allowing myself to play games. The main exception to this is if I am genuinely too tired to do anything in real life, if I'm burnt out and exhausted, in which case playing games can provide the much needed rest that my body and mind requires. So picking up in Ephesians 5 verses 15 to 16 of the English Standard Version, we read, "Look carefully then how you walk, not as unwise but as wise, making the best use of the time, because the days are evil." And in the New International Version, the same 2 verses read, "Be very careful then how you live, not as unwise but as wise, making the most of every opportunity, because the days are evil." And in the King James Version we read, "See then that ye walk circumspectly, not as fools, but as wise, redeeming the time, because the days are evil." I love the phrase redeeming time. When we think of redeeming someone or giving someone a redemption story, they go from being seen as the bad guys to being seen as the good guys, or at least they come across as less bad. This verse tells us time itself can be redeemed. And because the days are evil, we need to redeem them. The word redeemed actually means to compensate for the faults of, or to take something back. Since the days are evil, we need to take back the times. Time which serves no good purpose can be put to good purpose. The New International Version makes the thought clear: make the most of every opportunity. This, I feel, is a better and more useful translation, accurately distinguishing the Greek word kairos from chronos. Both words mean time. We'll come back to this distinction in a little while. Let's dive a little deeper and see if there are any insights we can glean from the actual Greek. The way I look at the Greek, and my knowledge of Greek is nowhere near as advanced as those who translate the Bible, but the key words I'm focusing on is peripapatite, from the root word pateo, which is a verb meaning to tread, a verb that is itself derived from the name patos, meaning a beaten track, and is probably part of a long chain of words from which is derived the English word path. So verse 15, which the NIV carries the thought, be careful how you live, in the King James Version, see that ye walk circumspectly, and the English Standard Version, look carefully then how you walk, reminds me very much of Jesus' words in Matthew 7 verses 13 to 14, which in the English Standard Version reads, enter by the narrow gate, for the gate is wide, and the way is easy, that leads to destruction, and those who enter by it are many. For the gate is narrow, and the way is hard, that leads to life, and those who find it are few. And in the New International Version, the same verses read, enter through the narrow gate, for wide is the gate, and broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many enter through it. But small is the gate, and narrow the road that leads to life, and only a few find it. And in the King James Version, enter ye in the strait gate, for wide is the gate, and broad is the way that leadeth to destruction, and many there be which go in thereat. Because strait is the gate, and narrow is the way, which leadeth unto life, and few there be that find it. The other Greek word I find of particular interest here is exagorazomenoi, the root word being agora, meaning marketplace, but also contains the connotation of a wide open space. Often the centre of a town would be a very wide open space where people would sell their wares. The word agora might be familiar in English from the word agoraphobic, meaning one who is afraid of or one who shies away from wide open spaces. In this case, it's the idea of the marketplace that is important, as the word exagorazomenoi means those buying out. The act of redeeming time, then, is a case of sacrificing something you have for something you want. That is to say, redeeming time is transactional in nature. This reminds me of an economic principle called opportunity cost. Everything we do comes at a cost, and that cost is all the things we could be doing instead of doing the things we are doing.
Taken care of?
If I'm busy doing X, I don't have time to do Y. And while some degree of multitasking is possible, this rule generally holds true. Every choice we make in life opens some doors and closes others. This is not just a case of redeeming the moment, but it's about how we live our whole lives. Not just making the most of every opportunity, but creating as many opportunities as we can to advance the gospel, because these times are evil. Walking the narrow road, then, means step by step, moment by moment, making the best use of our time so as not to waste it unfruitfully. On the other hand, our bodies, minds and spirits do need rest. Gaming can be restful and relaxing. God himself on the seventh day took a rest, and in so doing set a lasting example for us to follow, that we need rest in our lives. Indeed, I would argue that failure to rest, resulting in spiritual burnout, mental exhaustion and physical fatigue, is not a wise or efficient use of our time. Sometimes you can throw yourself at a problem and not find a solution, no matter how hard you work, but then after taking a break, the solution can come to you. Sometimes when we have prioritized God in our lives and worked hard for the Lord and worked hard to provide for ourselves and our families, we not only can, but we absolutely should find time to relax. Relaxing can mean anything from reading a book, watching TV, listening to music, or playing video games, either solo or with people, or engaging in any other activity that is not inherently sinful, but that you find enjoyable and relaxing. Therefore, it is possible to play video games and still be a good steward of the time that God has given us. However, we must be careful not to get carried away with gaming. That probably means setting limits on how long you play for, at least until you're in the habit of making sure you fit gaming into your life, rather than trying to fit your life around gaming. Now, speaking of time management, we have two forms of time used in the Bible. That is to say, there are two words used in the Greek New Testament. Actually, there is more than just two, but we're only going to focus on two in this study because I want to contrast the words chronos and the words kairos. Both mean time, but there is an important distinction between the two. Chronos is the more familiar concept of time. Each second comes after the next sequentially. Seconds become minutes, minutes become hours, hours become days, and so on. Chronos is measured by a clock, hence the word chronograph, which is the Old English word for clock, and chronology, meaning to put things in order of when they occur. The other word is kairos, which has a different meaning. Kairos, rather than meaning chronological time, means opportune time. Its basis is in agriculture, referring to the growing and planting seasons. Making the most of the kairos, then, means if it's planting season, to use every second for getting the seeds in the ground while the time is right. And if it's harvest season, get out there and harvest while there is still time before the plants rot in the ground. So this verse can be looked at in the light of these words from Solomon. In Ecclesiastes 3 verses 1 to 8 in the English Standard Version we read, "For everything there is a season, and a time for every matter under heaven, a time to be born, and a time to die, a time to plant, and a time to pluck up what is planted, a time to kill, and a time to heal, a time to break down, and a time to build up, a time to weep, and a time to laugh, a time to mourn, and a time to dance, a time to carry away stones, and a time to gather stones together, a time to embrace, and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek, and a time to lose, a time to keep, and a time to cast away, a time to tear, and a time to sow, a time to keep silence, and a time to speak, a time to love, and a time to hate, a time for war, and a time for peace." And in the New International Version we read, "There is a time for everything, and a season for every activity under the heavens, a time to be born, and a time to die, a time to plant, and a time to uproot, a time to kill, and a time to heal, a time to tear down, and a time to build, a time to weep, and a time to laugh, a time to mourn, and a time to dance, a time to scatter stones, and a time to gather them, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to search and a time to give up, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to mend, a time to be silent and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace. And the King James Version reads, "To everything there is a season and a time, to every purpose under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to pluck up that which is planted, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to break down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to cast away stones and a time to gather stones together, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to get and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to cast away, a time to rend and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time of war and a time of peace." This is why I prefer the New International Version translation, "make the most of every opportunity," because it conveys the thought behind the passage better. So we need to be careful in how we live our lives, doing the right things at the right time. We would be in violation of the Ephesians 5 principle if we were gaming when we have the opportunity to do something more important. For example, we shouldn't be gaming while at work or at church or at a social function, unless of course it's a gaming convention. To make clear the difference between chronos and kairos, let's consider I have a number of household chores to do. I need to wash and dry my clothes, I need to vacuum the house, and I need to cook dinner. Thinking about these three tasks in terms of chronos time, maybe it takes 3 hours to wash and dry my clothes, half an hour to 3/4 of an hour to vacuum the house, and 2.5 hours to cook dinner for my family. That means I need to budget 3 hours plus 3/4 hour plus 2.5 hours equals 6.25 hours. Now, considering the same problem from the point of view of kairos time, if the weather is dry and sunny with a gentle breeze, it makes sense to do my laundry first to take advantage of the ideal drying weather. The vacuuming can wait. If it's early morning, it doesn't make sense to cook dinner so that it's cold by the time my family wants to eat it, but I can vacuum the house at any time I like. So if the weather is favourable, then now is a good time, kairos time, to do the laundry. If dinner takes 2.5 hours to cook, that's chronos time. The best time, kairos time, to put it on is 2.5 hours before it needs to be ready. So as well as being disciplined and not allowing ourselves to be sucked into the game so deeply that we spend longer gaming than we should also make sure we have chosen the best time for our gaming so that we are not wasting valuable opportunities. Moving on from Ephesians 5 to Colossians 4, Colossians 4:5 in the English Standard Version reads, "Walk in wisdom towards outsiders, making the best use of time." Colossians 4:5 in the New International Version reads, "Be wise in the way you act towards outsiders, make the most of every opportunity." And Colossians 4 verse 5 in the King James Version reads, "Walk in wisdom towards them that are without, redeeming the time." This is basically saying the same thing as Ephesians 5:15-16, but is specifically talking about how we interact with other people. The key Greek word, peripatete, exagorazomenai, and kairos, are the same Greek words we find in Ephesians 5. Thus we need to consider how we are interacting with others. Are we ignoring others while we play our game? I have to confess I've done that myself, and it has left me feeling extremely guilty. In a spirit of repentance, for which merely apologising isn't enough, I have made it a firm principle that if others are talking, my headphones come off and games are taken off the screen, so that I can give people my full undivided attention. Hopefully this will never happen to me again. It is very easy for gaming to create the same set of feelings as social engagement, and therefore to take the place of social engagement. This can leave people around us feeling marginalised or alienated. If left unchecked, this selfish gaming can destroy relationships, even tearing families apart. Gaming does not have to be selfish though. We can use the time we spend gaming fruitfully by including others in our gaming experience, especially if we're playing games that involve 2 or more players, such as massively multiplayer online games. Through these platforms we can reach people that we might not be able to reach in other ways. Keeping true to the theme of Colossians 4:5, we must be wise in the way we act around outsiders, not foolishly ramming the Bible down the throats of everyone we meet because we feel we're doing our Christian duty, but rather building up relationships with people and feeling them out to see if they are open to hearing the gospel. So just playing with other people and enjoying the time spent with those people, even if Jesus or the gospel are never mentioned, the shared experience can help build a relationship. We can then make use of the kairos, or opportunity, when it comes up to speak about the gospel when we sense that they are open to hearing it. A friend once told me, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. I'm not sure if he's quoting someone or where that quote comes from. But it's a very profound insight that I feel is worth sharing. We must first build up a trusting relationship with people so that they are at least open to hearing what we have to say, rather than foolishly ramming the gospel down people's throats and thus putting them off Christianity. So don't feel bad about playing an online game with friends or family or even a bunch of strangers and not once mentioning Jesus. That's okay. If you're building up friendships and earning people's trust, your chronos time is not wasted. You are sowing the seeds of trust that will hopefully ripen at the appropriate kairos into an opportunity to share the gospel, or not, according to the person's character and God's will. Moving on to Psalm 90 verse 12 in the English Standard Version reads, "So teach us to number our days, that we may get a heart of wisdom." And in the New International Version it reads, "Teach us to number our days, that we may gain a heart of wisdom." And in the King James Version, "So teach us to number our days, that we may apply our hearts unto wisdom." The idea of numbering our days is in the context of eternity. To God, all the days of our lives are fleeting. The psalmist is asking for the wisdom to realize how very short our lives really are, and the wisdom to use what little time we have wisely. However, we don't need to look at our lives from the perspective of eternity to realize that our time is short. The older we get, the faster time seems to fly by. We aren't just moving inexorably towards the inevitable end of our lives, we seem to be accelerating towards that destination. It's all too tempting to feel like time isn't moving forward if we don't think about it, but second by second, minute by minute, hour by hour, our time slips away, and deadlines that we thought were far off are much nearer than we imagined. The psalmist here is praying for wisdom to both realize that the time we have is limited and to use that brief time wisely. This is even more relevant when gaming, as video games are designed to make time fly by faster than we realize. Especially some of the more involved games like MMORPGs, which offer an escape into a whole new world. We log on for a bit of fun and relaxation, the next thing we know our family are saying good night, so we decide to finish up what we were doing and go to bed. The next thing we know it's morning and our family are waking up asking us if we even went to sleep. If you can relate to this, a useful idea is to set a time limit for how long you're going to game and get a countdown timer on your phone to go off when that time has elapsed. Then discipline yourself to log off when you have played for long enough. This can prevent gaming time encroaching into important areas of your life, such as getting enough restful sleep. Unless you're a journalist making money by reporting on games or a professional gamer chasing after prize money, another good technique is to remind yourself every day that it really is just a game. If things do go badly in the game, it doesn't matter at all. Moving on to James 4 verse 14 in the English Standard Version, we read, "Yet you do not know what tomorrow will bring. What is your life? For you are a mist that appears for a little time and then vanishes." And James 4:14 in the New International Version reads, "Why, you do not even know what will happen tomorrow. What is your life? You are a mist that appears for a little while and then vanishes." And in the King James Version we read, "Whereas ye know not what shall be on the morrow. For what is your life? It is even a vapour that appeareth for a little time, and then vanisheth away." This verse further rams home the brevity of life, while at the same time reminding us that life is also highly uncertain, which further emphasizes the importance of making the most prudent use of the short time we have. Time is precious and not to be squandered, unless we want our future to be full of regrets. And let's not forget that the future is coming sooner than we could possibly imagine. We know what's happening right now, but we don't know what will happen tomorrow. We might have made plans to get that job done tomorrow, but something might crop up tomorrow that prevents us from doing it. Therefore, if we have the opportunity to do it today, then we should not put it off until tomorrow. And moving on to Matthew 6 verse 33, in the English Standard Version we read, "But seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you." And in the New International Version it reads, "But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well." And in the King James Version the same verse reads, "But seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you." This one's rather basic and probably one of the first things new Christians learn, but it's worth remembering that the highest priority in our life must be God and his kingdom. We must not allow the cravings of dopamine that comes from playing video games or scrolling through social media to replace the need for God in our lives. In the light of James 4 above, given the uncertainty and brevity of life, our highest priority must be seeking God through prayer and Bible study, and seeking his kingdom through fellowship with other Christians in the church. So with that out of the way, let's look at some practical ways we can redeem our time and put God first in our lives. So first, we can set boundaries on our gaming time. Some games actually allow you to set warnings that flash up if you have spent too much time gaming. As well, we can make use of technology such as mobile phones and computers with countdown timers to time how long we spend gaming. Some internet routers allow you to set up times when the internet will be shut down, forcing you away from computers in the run up to bedtime to help you get good quality uninterrupted sleep. Make use of family and friends who can remind you of goals you told them about. For example, you could ask family to remind you when it's bedtime so you don't continue gaming for too long. And also you can make a list of higher priority things in your life to check off your to-do list before you log in or start your game, so that your gaming can be relaxing and enjoyed with a clear conscience. Now don't get me wrong, gaming is fun no matter what, but it is, in my opinion, a little bit more fun when played with a clear conscience for relaxation, rather than being played as a way of escaping the worries in the back of your mind. And the last idea is we can create a physical barrier between you and the game. If you play a lot of console games, for instance, after you finish gaming, unplug the console and place the controller in a drawer so that there is a task between you and the game to help you resist the temptation to jump straight back into the game as soon as you log off. And here are the lessons that I've learned. Again, I want to emphasize these are just my lessons that I've personally learned. If you've learned something different, please feel free to share that in the comments. Firstly, God wants us to use our time wisely because our time is short and our future is uncertain. Secondly, there is a time for everything, and that includes gaming and entertainment. Also, without self-discipline, gaming can become an idol that takes over our lives. Left unchecked, it can become problematic, resulting in self-neglect and neglect of other people, which damages our health, our career, and our relationships. Combined with self-discipline, good time management can include gaming. Gaming can be fun and fruitful and refreshing both physically and mentally. Gaming can build relationships and help advance the gospel. Okay, I hope that study was helpful. Please feel free to leave comments in the comments section and let me know your lessons and your insights that you've gained from the Bible. They don't necessarily have to be related to what I'm talking about here. And I'll look forward to seeing you in a future video.
This is order. Solidify.